Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Insights. Today, we're joined by the seemingly indefatigable David Leary. So, David, you'll forgive me if I embarrass you a bit, but David's one of the most innovative and influential forces in the small business accounting world. Throughout his career in the accounting space, David's worked in different capacities at Intuit and Melio. He's also a co-founder of Earmark, which offers podcasts that allow you to earn CPE points based on the content you want to hear. He's also a co-host of the Accounting Podcast, which has been named the #1 world's accounting, bookkeeping, and tax podcast. And he's been named by Accounting Today as one to watch in their top 100 most influential people. David, as I've said before, I'm very, very excited for our conversation today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Wendy. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So I think as a starting point, I'd like to look at the reality that lots of accountants are facing. So a macro view of the state of affairs. So you yourself, David, you've lived through the transition from desktop to cloud, and now we're in this era of artificial intelligence. And with 2026 even bringing things like inflation, interest rates, and tech hype, my question to you is, do you have one thing that you think accountants should really be paying attention to, and what's just a distraction?
I mean, the same answer could be for both. It has to be AI, right? In accounting. You have to pay attention to it, but at the same time, it's a complete distraction, right? It can be both at the same time. I mean, I think if you think about the shifts, like you said, desktop to cloud, right? And then, well, actually, it went from like desktop to like CD-ROM, or disks to CD-ROM, right? And then networking, where the accounting system could be on multiple computers and they were sharing data. Then it went to cloud, right? And then it was sharing data around the world, all through your browser. So you've had this evolution. And the whole time there's been like this promise, right? Of like, oh, you'll be able to do advisory. It's always been this like advisory talk. And now with AI coming, it's even more that talk, right? And so this is where, because, the promise is AI is going to do all the work, the boring work, the compliance work.
Yeah.
And then it's going to free you up to do all this great advisory work. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, because a lot of that boring compliance stuff was kind of solved by cloud and bank feeds. It helped you be more efficient, and nobody just all of a sudden became all these advisors, right? This promise is always there, right? And arguably with AI now, I argue it probably is better at advising than it is the data entry.
Okay.
Everybody thinks AI is going to solve all the data entry, but the data entry has to be perfect every time. And AI is not good at perfect. AI is really good at taking a balance sheet of profit and loss, a bunch of data, upload it in and say, synthesize this data and give me a summary.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if you're an advisor, right? If you're an advisor, a human advisor, and somebody gave you that, you would give a summary. Then tomorrow, if they gave it to you again, you give a summary, and there could be some parts that were different in it, slightly different, but the vibe of the summary would be the same. Yes. And that's good enough. But if you think about data entry, if you're a human and I say, log this receipt, you have to do it exactly the same every single day. AI will do it the same 2 days in a row. Then the third day, it'll just, try to be smarter. And then it'll log it to something else. And so the data entry, that's not okay. But for an advising conversation, you can have a paragraph about somebody's small business, and it could be slightly different than the paragraph you made the day before and the day before and the day before. So I actually think that AI is not going to be this thing that, it's going to let everybody come advisory. I think it's going to take away the advisory work. And we're already kind of seeing that, right? Where we've seen some news stories we've covered where people are just uploading their stuff to a GPT tool and asking for advice and helping them make financial decisions, bypassing the quote unquote advisor accountant from the picture. Yeah. So it's going to be really good at helping you offer advisory services, but it's going to do the advising probably, not you. The compliance is not dead. Like you watching the compliance and making sure data entry is correct, that's going to be the real value, because you can't trust it at this point to do things correctly, repeatedly and consistently. It's just not there. And that's why it's like, you have to pay attention to it, but it's really hype and distracting at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. No, that's a very interesting take. And I think one that people won't have expected, or at least I wouldn't have expected. I think my idea of the AI sort of influence on the accounting space is always that we're going to stop doing all the grunts work. So it's interesting to hear your perspective on that. That's really cool.
And the other, that is actually a really bad way to think about like bookkeeping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it's the grunt work, it's the data entry, but it's the most important part of the stack. We saw this in the cloud. So many people popped up and they're like, I'm going to create a business to do virtual CFO services. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what they quickly realized, if they didn't control the bookkeeping for the client, they can't provide virtual CFO services because they can't depend on the bookkeeping. So they brought so then those companies that we're just going to do virtual CFO services, those firms eventually did the full stack because they had to, because if you don't control the bookkeeping, how can you give advice on the books?
Agreed.
Right? And so that's kind of that same mindset is kind of being tossed around with AI. Like, oh, the AI is going to do I'm going to outsource the books, the data entry to AI, and then I can do this higher value work. I don't know if that's true. I just don't buy it. I think you have to have that human in control along the way to verify that data is correctly, because you don't want to speak for data that just blindly AI put in.
Yeah.
And we've learned this lesson a hard way in our own company. Or, obviously this is a few years ago and AI's changed, but still makes these errors and these hallucinations. But we had data on, so we have an app called Earmark that lets people listen to podcasts and get their CP credits or CPD, depending on where you're listening in the world. And one of the people that had a channel, they wanted their stats. And so I exported the stats out, but it was a really bad raw format and I wanted it to be in a table. So I passed it through ChatGPT to be in a table. I send it to the person. I would say, oh, here's all the stats for your courses. Send it to them. Comes back. He says, that's great. But that row right there, I never recorded that episode. It just added a row of data for a made up podcast episode and made up download or enrollment numbers for the courses. Like, so unless you're constantly double checking it, like you can't depend on it. Like it's going to, but like I said, on the advisory side, it's okay. It's okay if it makes a sentence different than it did last time.
Yes.
But as long as the vibe and the gist and the conclusion's kind of the same. And usually it's good at that. They'll come to the same conclusion, but the details in that paragraph will be a lot different than they were yesterday when it came to the same conclusion.
I think that will help out a lot of people who are really, really stressed about this idea that their jobs are being come for by AI. I think that's some brilliant insights. Now,
I mean, I haven't seen, you talk to accountants. I've talked to accountants. We have access to thousands and thousands and thousands of accountants because of our podcasts and our audience and on LinkedIn, et cetera. I have yet to meet an accountant or maybe an internal controller at a company who said, oh, we implemented X software or X piece of AI and I got rid of my accounting team. I don't know any accounting jobs that have been eliminated because of AI. Now there's headlines and big companies have done layoffs and they say, oh, it's because we're going to use AI to do our bookkeeping or our accounting. And they're laying off people in the middle management and offices. But I think that's just an excuse of CEOs and boards that had a poorly run company to lay people off and blame something else, not their management, their poor management, right? And so I have yet to talk to somebody who's like, oh, we implemented this amazing piece of technology and I got rid of 4 people on my accounting team. I'm still waiting for that story to come in. I have not seen it yet. So if it's going to eliminate all these jobs, shouldn't it be eliminating a couple now? Yeah. It can't just be a cliff where one day it just eliminates 1 million accounting jobs.
A whole bunch of jobs.
There's got to be a couple at first. And I haven't heard of, right now we're at 0 accountants have lost their jobs because of AI. Actually lost it because of AI, not because there's a headline that says they lost it because of AI, but actually a tool is implemented. The accountant's like, oh, I'm done. They don't need me anymore. That happened.
Wow. Actually, I want to go back to this point that I think you made in the past about how much energy it takes to run a massive data center versus sort of the human brain. My question is, for a small firm, right, which doesn't have a huge IT budget, how can they stay efficient in this new AI world without feeling like they're constantly changing the newest, most expensive gadget or tool?
I mean, the one thing AI has done, it's democratized knowledge a little bit. And so if you have, for what, $200 a year, right, you can get 2 or 3 AI tools, get off the free plans and start using those in your business. That's one way, right? And you can do it for small things and utilize them. But really, a lot of the apps now are adding AI built in.
Yes.
Apps like Xero, QuickBooks, they're building this AI in. And so you're gonna naturally get exposure to it and gain some efficiencies along the way from it. But this one panacea of like, it's just gonna do all the work, just probably isn't gonna be there. I think I saw some data. We covered a report that I think it was the CEO of SaaStr, and he's talking about that they've created all these agents to do work.
Okay.
And they're uber productive because they're working 24 hours a day. So there's a productivity gain, but the managers, mid-level managers, have the exact same amount of cognitive debt, if you want to call it that, or thinking space. And because managing the employees and now managing the AI is the exact same amount of work.
Right.
So now the productivity is higher, but you as a firm owner or manager at a firm are going to have the same amount of work managing a bunch of AI agents that are working 24 hours a day than you had when you managed a team of 20 employees.
Yeah.
For management level, that's going to be the same amount of work because you have to have supervision and management and
Yes.
dialing something back and reviewing the work and fixing the work. Like that's still going to be there. And then the anxiety of like, because these things, if you give work to an employee, you can kind of go to bed at night and sleep that it's not going to explode. The employees,
Yes.
hopefully, the employee has some skill set. They're not a bad employee. He gets to work.
Ryder is a good employee. Yeah. Yeah.
But you could give something to AI and you think like it's all set up to do it, and then you go to bed and then you wake up in the middle of the night because you don't really know if it's going to go off the rails. Your human employee, the odds are low. So from a management perspective, you're seeing the same amount of cognitive load, right? And you're seeing possibly stress of the work not getting done is probably higher, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's say, for example, we've got ourselves a company who's successfully adopted a bit of AI based on, some of the suggestions that you've mentioned. And we're appealing now to accountants because they're by nature sort of focused on the decimal points. We said before that AI is probabilistic. It looks at sort of wide range of values rather than focusing on the decimal point. But how would you say you personally bridge the gap so that while you're adopting AI, you're not necessarily losing control of all the numbers and you're still in control?
Well, I think you have to have processes. So my co-host Blake Aubrey says this all the time, that you can't just come into a firm and roll out AI. You have to have all your processes, induction orders first, and then there's steps in your process that could be eliminated with AI. Hey, we could do this with AI, but then the step after that needs to be a human in the loop, a review step.
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
So you can't just say we're going to roll out AI to do this thing, but if you've never had manual processes to do it with human in the loop reviews along the way in your manual processes, you can't just roll out AI. You basically have to document and have good processes at your firm, then use AI, or else your AI rollouts are going to fail.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think absolutely essential, at least based on my understanding of AI adoption, as well as what we've chatted about so far, is you still need that human intervention. You still need that process management. Otherwise, I mean, we're still at a stage where, like you said, these things can start hallucinating. You can start getting thrown out things that weren't expected. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess on this topic of AI and what we've mentioned before, people are trying to go from compliance work to more advisory work. So if you are helping someone build a high valued monthly package, how would you present the insights to a client so that they actually feel like there's value coming out of this rather than, they're just seeing another report?
I mean, I think in me being somebody who is on the other side of the equation as a small business owner, right? At some level, I find more value in the compliance. Like, what are the things I have to do that need to be done to keep me in legal compliance so I don't get in trouble, I don't get fined, etc. I don't need my accountant to tell me how to run my business. Mm-hmm. Actually, I prefer not, because they probably don't only think about running a podcast business, right? And that's this is a disconnect that I think is in the industry. Everybody thinks accountants want dashboards, small businesses want dashboards, and they want advisory, and they want all this advice. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure they really do. They kind of do, but not really. They want to make sure they're not in trouble first. Then when it's almost like, what's that pyramid of needs?
Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of small business owners are running down in here at the bottom, which is like, is my data correct? Am I in compliance? Am I going to get fined? Right? Am I going to lose the business? And accountants are trying to like sell them services right here up at the tip. They're going to give you advisory, and like there's a huge disconnect on what people want and need versus what accountants think they should be offering. And until all those other needs are met, they don't want advisory services. Yeah. I've never met, I was at Intuit for 22 years. I've talked to thousands of small business owners, 10,000 small business owners, maybe. I remember one small business owner that said, geez, I wish I had a dashboard.
Really?
But everybody's shoving dashboards down small business owners' face. Everything, but that's that triangle at the top. Everybody's trying to solve for these needs, and the real needs are: can I keep my doors open this week? Can I do my payroll this week? Right? Am I going to get fined because I didn't pay taxes correctly?
Yeah.
Like that's where small business owners, they're operating down in that part of that triangle, and everybody else, like accountants, are trying to sell them this thing at the tip of the triangle. And sure, you might have some clients that are at that and maybe be ready for that, but I would argue the vast majority of small businesses are not even close to there.
And it's a case of, sorry, go for it. I was just going to ask whether you think it's a case of you can get them up to that point, because I'm curious. Obviously, in the role that we find ourselves in, specifically as SIF, we're always trying to sort of navigate and understand how people as small business owners can get to that point. So I'm really curious how that in-between phase gets bridged.
I don't have that. I don't have that figured out. I just, I do have an example of the way the small business owners think. You know, there's the balance at your bank, and then there's the balance that's either in QuickBooks or Xero, the book balance. Right.
Okay.
And in many cases, they're never exactly matching each other. Right. And a lot of business owners look at that bank balance, but they might have 4 or 5 outstanding transactions. So the book balance is maybe lower.
Yes.
And so they can never reconcile that. And I remember being at XeroCon in San Diego, and this is a Xero customer, just a small business owner or whatever, talking to some Xero product manager, asking them about this. And the product manager not really understanding what they're asking, but the business owner, that's all they care about. They don't care about all this other stuff. They want to know, how much cash do I have, and can I spend it or not? And so I guess at that time in Xero, both numbers weren't reported side by side. And that's what people want to see, right? Like, okay, what is my QuickBooks balance or my cash balance, and what's my GL balance?
Yes.
And they're not, and that's way down in the bottom of the triangle. That's where most people still are. And to get them out of that, I don't really know exactly how to get them there, but you can't jump them to the top of the pyramid. You kind of have to help them. Really, you got to give them the comfort and solve all these things at the bottom of the pyramid. Mm-hmm. Right. And until you're solving all the things at the bottom of the pyramid, you can't just, I'm going to create this advisory business, and I'm only going to take clients that are up here in the top triangle. But if they don't want these services from me, they're not going to be a client. But there's not enough people out there that are that high of that triangle. They're not up at the top.
Fair enough. And I'm curious, so with the adoption of AI changing to different degrees, how the accounting space is going to look, do you think that there's going to be a change in the way that the next generation of accountants are being trained? So what does a junior accountant role look like in 2028?
I think they have, coming out of college, I don't know if they're probably going to be trained properly. There's still going to be a lot of learning on the job. And I think the example is Excel. I've talked to accounting students that they graduate college, they get their degree, accounting degree. Mm-hmm. You know, they're going to become CPAs. They're going to take the CPA exam. They go get their first job at a firm, and finally discovered that Microsoft Excel is hotkeys.
Okay.
Right. So even though maybe in college, a professor's maybe having them use AI, but it's not being used in a practical sense, right? Or the real power of it. But the trick is for accountants now is you're going to have the accounting knowledge to manage the AI. We talked about the managing, right? But how do you get all that accounting experience and knowledge when you're entry level?
Yeah.
This is going to be the big issue, because it's very clear it's not going to it has not been happening in schools.
Yes.
Right. The education, Excel being the example of that. So how does somebody get experience when AI is in theory going to do the entry level work? Mm-hmm. That I don't have the answer for either. My recommendation is you have to get in the weeds. And this is why for our own business, I'm not an accountant. I don't have an accounting firm. I just worked in accounting tech for a long time. But the reason people ask me all the time, why don't you outsource your bookkeeping? I have to be in the weeds. I have to use this stuff, or I don't know how it works. I can't speak about it. Right? I have to be touching QuickBooks. I have to be touching Xero. I have to be touching bank feeds. I have to be touching all the apps in the ecosystem. And if I'm not doing that, I can't learn how these apps are working. And so I think I would say for an accounting student, go get a job at a small business and do real accounting. Do real accounting. And yes, it's a hassle and it's crazy, because you're like, why did I have to go to 8 websites and email 6 people to get a code so I could upload an invoice to a vendor so I could get a payment? That's real bookkeeping. Yeah. And until you do all that, you won't know what you won't be able to step back and watch an AI and understand what it can and can't do, or what it's doing correctly or not correctly. You just have to get experience. And the best way to get experience is just do. Go get a job at a small business and start doing the bookkeeping. It's a good way to learn.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'm now thinking about sort of 5 years' time, 4 years' time, let's say, so 2030. With what we've spoken about and the way AI might or might not be adopted globally, do you think, and again, I'm asking you to speculate, but do you think we'll be logging into softwares, or do you think these tools will just be, an invisible layer of our business that we just talk to?
That's hard to know, because I think Intuit's betting or hedging its bets, right?
Okay.
If you look at Intuit's putting AI inside of you to drink. Intuit's putting AI directly inside of QuickBooks, right? And inside their products. But Intuit also is putting their data right inside of ChatGPT. They had that big announcement with ChatGPT where now you can just open up ChatGPT, connect it to your QuickBooks data, and work in ChatGPT. Right? So Intuit's hedging both bets, because I don't think anybody knows where it's headed to. I think we're starting to see a lot of very small niche type AI apps pop up that are tax law specific or tax this specific, and they're chatbots to help you research tax things. Mm-hmm. I feel like with every version of the GPTs that come out, more and more of that's just out of the box. So if I was a software developer and I was building a specialized tool to do tax knowledge, my bet is in 2030, my tool is going to be useless, because all that's just going to be in the models. Yeah. For free. It's just that you just get it out of the box. And we've had this ourselves. So we have to do compliance work when we do the continuing education credits. So we built a custom GPT that we uploaded all the compliance rules we're supposed to follow to provide these educational credits. And I used to use it to research and make sure decisions we were going to make would be in compliance and how to stay in compliance. And now I can just use ChatGPT 5 out of the box, and I get the exact same answers, because it can go do the research, and I don't have to make it use the one GPT I made, the custom one where I uploaded the knowledge to. Yeah. They just have the knowledge now. And that's going to be the big difference, is I think you're going to use the generic tools off the shelf more and not specialized tools. So if you're buying a specialized tool, don't sign a 5-year contract. Yeah, that's a good feeling. Because you might be able to get it off the shelf for in the normal price of a GPT tool. You don't lock yourself into a 5 or 10 year contract. Just do month to month on any of these tools right now.
No, that's top advice. I think it's exactly like you say. It's just developing so quickly that I don't think it's a wise decision to be signing 5-year contracts for that type of thing up front.
And then the big companies like Intuit, they're hedging their bet. So whichever way it goes, they're going to be okay.
Yes.
And this is what Microsoft did. The reason when Microsoft won years ago, they were teamed up with IBM to build OS2. They were teamed up helping Apple build their Mac OS at the time. And they were also building Windows at the time. They hedged their bets and they were involved in all three. So whichever operating system exploded, Microsoft was going to have a piece of it. And it's that same type of thing. Like you just hedging your bets across. You don't know which of these technology is going to win, but it's probably going to be one of them. It could be all of them. And so they're hedging their bets.
No, that is, I think, a clever bit of advice. So I guess if you yourself, or I guess you are, as a small business owner, what's the first financial decision you'd be happy to let become automated, or let an automated system handle? And what's the last one you'd ever give up?
I think right now this is that gray area of like, so a lot of these AI companies right now are saying they're doing bookkeeping, but they're really just doing bank matching. They're just matching data, and that is not accounting, and that's not bookkeeping. But I think right now, even in QuickBooks, there's an auto reconciliation feature, and so it takes your bank statement and rips out the ending balance and the closing date, and then gets all the transactions, so you can more quickly finish the reconciliation. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a bridge. So it's a small dent, but in general, I don't think I would let it pay bills.
Okay.
I would not let it pay bills. And the reason why is we just had somebody paid us a significant amount of money through our contract software.
Okay.
And then on the accounting side, they still sent us a separate payment for what was already collected through the contract software. And my guess is this was AI related. Like somebody missed, like a human. Yeah. It was a significant amount of money that if a human was doing the bookkeeping on the AP side, they probably would have been like, wait, didn't we already pay them and hit the brakes?
Yeah.
And the fact that a whole nother payment was just scheduled automatically tells me it's probably AI. So I would not be using AI for any money going out the door at this point, because that's just really a big mess when money goes out the door. You could use AI to send an invoice to a customer that might be the wrong amount. Then you're like, oh, I messed up. Here's the correct invoice.
Yes.
That you can live with, right? But when it's money leaving your business, you can't try. Like, that's too risky.
Yeah.
And a good analogy I've been using with people with AI is I'll use like Microsoft Copilot for like cooking stuff, especially barbecue, right? Or smoking meats. You're on a 12-hour window. You can go back and forth in the conversation. And if it gave me bad advice 2 hours ago, some piece of data was wrong. Well, I have time to adjust it and readjust. And, you have a 12-hour window, right? Or an 8-hour window on a smoke, right? A piece of meat. But if you think about, I wouldn't use AI for a cookie recipe. Because if it gives, like, baking so much chemistry, right? If you have an extra half tablespoon of something in your cookie and you put it in the oven and they're cooked for 8 minutes, you have no recovery time.
Sure.
Like those cookies, lack of a better word, are cooked, right? They are cooked. And so anything that has to be precise, I'm not sure you can trust for. But like barbecue or smoking meat, you got this window, like, hey, you can check back in, but this is where it's at. Here's where the meat temperature is. Should I adjust this? You have this window of freedom where you're kind of almost like a teammate with the AI.
Yes.
And you're bouncing it back and forth, but just to blindly follow AI, like put this measurement in this measurement, mix it in a bowl, put it in the oven. If any of those are wrong, it's not going to be successful. Mm-hmm. So the more precise you have to be, I say, the less you want to use AI. If you have that, like I said, if you're smoking a piece of meat and you have hours to adjust and, monitor it and adjust and readjust and tweak, but if you just blindly follow a cookie recipe and one of those numbers are wrong, the cookies are done. You can't recover from it. Because once you mix it in the bowl, you can't take it out.
You can't take out. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think what I'm gathering from our conversation is that human intervention is always going to be necessary. I mean, there's no getting away from that, regardless of how much time you can save or grunt work that can be resolved. The human intervention is always going to be necessary, which, in fact, I think is probably a pretty positive note to leave all of our listeners on. I do just have one more quick fire question for you.
Yeah.
And so, because the theme of our chat has been sort of how to navigate, survive, be resilient in this new AI space and not to be worried about it, if you had to describe the current state of the accounting world as you understand it, using a metaphor from the American wilderness, so navigating the Rockies, surviving the deep winter, what would it be?
I'd say it's probably like walking down the Las Vegas Strip. like it's like everything seems closer than it is, right? If you've ever been to Las Vegas and you're like, oh, we could just walk to that casino. And it turns out it's like a mile longer than you expect it to be. There's just more distractions everywhere. People are bumping into you. Mistakes are being made. You sometimes have to go through weird paths through a casino to get back on the main strip, in and out. And I think like it's just, there's a lot of chaos. Everything seems closer than it is, but there's just a lot of chaos. And it's really, in actuality, it's all further away. And there's the path to get there is way crazier than you think it's going to be. I don't know if that's a great analogy, but no,
that's a perfect metaphor. And if anything, it almost describes the conversation that we've had with trying to navigate everything and not being too worried about things that are too far or too close. I think that is perfect.
I mean, you look and you're like, oh, the stratosphere right there. We could just walk there. 2 hours later, you're like, this is not a good idea.
No, I think that's a perfect analogy. Listen, David, really, really appreciate you taking time out of your day to chat with us. I know for a fact that the listeners will really appreciate your insights. I think massive, massive kudos, because very often these conversations turn into, oh, we're in such big trouble. How are we going to navigate this? So your insights, the fact that, people aren't going to lose their jobs, that's what they're doing is still important. So much appreciated.
And we use AI a lot. We're not getting rid of any employees. Like, we're probably going to hire more. Like it helps everybody be more productive. But it's not the big tool they think it's going to be. And my dad, I grew up working construction, and nail guns came. Nobody lost their jobs. People just stopped using the hammer as much and using the nail gun more. But it wasn't like, oh, we could get rid of bodies. But it's just going to help people do individual work a little bit more efficient, a little bit faster, but it's not going to get rid of people. Like, I think it's really big fear people have to let go of.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, I mean, again, thank you so much for your time, everyone. And thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Insights. We'll see you again very soon.
Thanks, Lindsay.